Picture a stoplight. Ordinary Tuesday, nothing special about it. In the left lane sits a brand new blacked-out luxury SUV, the badge everyone recognizes, washed so recently the sky reflects in the hood. In the right lane, idling next to it, a 10-year-old Honda with a small dent in the bumper, a cold coffee in the cup holder, and a check engine light that has been on so long it is basically a mood ring. Quick question, which driver is wealthy? You already answered. Everybody does. And here is the part that quietly ruins the game forever once you see it. Across America in 2026, the smarter bet, the statistically safer bet, is the dented Honda. The driver in the shiny SUV is far more likely to be drowning. The one in the Honda is far more likely to be free. So how did we build a world where the people who look richest are often the most broke, while the people actually getting wealthy work hard to look like they own nothing? That question is the whole video, because looking poor on purpose turns out to be one of the most important money moves you can make, and the wealthy have understood it for a very long time. My name is Kay, and I am the friend who ran the math on all of this so you would not have to, then could not stop talking about it at dinner. Let me show you who is actually in that luxury SUV, because the picture is not the one the marketing sold you. A decade ago, the loud spenders were a smaller crowd. Today, they are everywhere, and a startling share are running on fumes. Heading into 2026, around 60% of Americans were living paycheck to paycheck. That number alone is sobering. The detail underneath it is the one that should make you put your coffee down. Around 40% of people earning six figures, $100,000 a year or more, were also living paycheck to paycheck. 2 out of every 5 high earners, the exact people we assume have it all figured out, finish the month with nothing left over. That is not a small salary problem. That is a spending problem wearing a nice watch. It helps to see where the money goes. The typical American household now spends around $6,500 a month just to exist, near $78,000 a year before a single luxury gets added on top. Meanwhile, the personal savings rate, the slice of income the average person actually keeps, has been sitting near 4.5%. Historically, that number ran closer to 8.5%. So we keep about half of what previous generations kept, while spending more than ever to look the part. More than half of adults could not cover a surprise $1,000 expense out of savings. Your emergency fund is apparently smaller than your streaming subscriptions, and one survey put the typical emergency balance somewhere around $600. Not $6,000, $600. That is the actual financial weather humming underneath a lot of those glossy car payments and perfectly lit weekend photos. And the makeup of the struggle has shifted. A few years ago, a good chunk of the paycheck-to-paycheck crowd were doing it by choice, spending freely, because they felt comfortable. That group shrank, and the share doing it out of pure necessity grew and passed them. In plain terms, more people are stretched now not because they are splurging on champagne, but because the basics quietly ate the whole plate. So the next time you glance at that shiny SUV and feel a flicker of envy, hold on to this. A large share of those payments are being made by people who are one missed paycheck away from a real crisis. The badge is real. The money behind it, very often, is not. Here is the detail almost everyone misses, and it explains the whole illusion. The loud version of wealth and the real version are rarely the same people. We were simply trained to confuse them. To understand why we keep falling for it, you have to understand what the spending is actually doing for us, because it is hardly ever about the object. Humans are wired to read status. For most of our history, those signals carried survival information. Who has food? Who has protection? Who is worth standing next to? That instinct never left. It just got hijacked by a marketing department. Today, the signals are a watch, a logo, a car, a vacation framed at exactly the right angle. We are not buying the thing. We are buying a sentence we hope someone else will say about us. The cruel joke is that the people we are performing for are performing right back, which means everyone is dressed up for an audience too busy adjusting its own costume to notice yours. Economists have a blunt word for the loop this creates: the treadmill. You buy the nicer car, you feel the lift for a few weeks, and then the new car quietly becomes your normal. The lift fades, so you reach for the next upgrade just to feel the same spark. The scenery never changes because you are running in place, paying for the privilege. And the meanest part is that the treadmill speeds up as your income climbs. That is lifestyle inflation, the silent thing hiding behind those paycheck-to-paycheck six-figure earners. Their income went up, their spending crept up to match, then nudged a little past it. A raise that should have bought freedom bought a heavier stack of monthly bills instead. Lifestyle inflation hits faster than a software update you never asked for, and it never asks permission. There is a sneaky mechanic here you have felt without naming. One nice purchase quietly demands a dozen more to match it. Buy one beautiful chair, and suddenly the couch looks shabby beside it, so the couch goes, then the rug, then the curtains, then the coffee table that no longer fits the vibe. One upgrade sets a new baseline, and everything around it has to rise to meet the chair. The same thing happens with the people we let in. Move into the nicer neighborhood and the pressure arrives uninvited. The unspoken rule about the car that belongs in that driveway, the vacations the other families take, the schools, the version of you that fits the zip code. The people who stay wealthy notice this cascade early and refuse to start it. They understand that the most expensive part of a purchase is often not the purchase. It is everything the purchase quietly signs you up to buy next. Now let me put a hard number on the cost of looking rich, because the math is more brutal than people let themselves admit. Start with the loudest status symbol in American life, the car. The average price paid for a new vehicle recently crossed $50,000. The average monthly payment on a new car climbed to around $770, an all-time high. The average new car loan now runs near $44,000. To make those payments survivable, buyers are stretching loans to lengths that would have sounded unhinged a generation ago. More than 1 in 5 new car buyers are now signing up for 7-year loans, over 84 months of payments, on a machine engineered to lose value the second you drive it off the lot. And nearly 1 in 5 new car payments now sits north of $1,000 a month. And here is what the ads never mention. Almost none of those $1,000 payments go to exotic supercars. They go to ordinary trucks and family SUVs, bought by ordinary people who decided the payment was the cost of looking like they had arrived. The depreciation underneath it is the quiet bleed nobody factors in. A new car can shed a fifth or more of its value in the first year alone. So when someone signs an 84-month loan, there is a long stretch where they owe more than the car is worth. They are underwater, paying interest on value that already evaporated. If the car gets totaled or they sell, the loan does not shrink to match. They are on the hook for the gap. Multiply that across the country, and you get the scale of it. Americans now owe roughly $1.7 trillion in auto loans. The car, the thing we treat as the obvious badge of having made it, has quietly become one of the largest anchors dragging households under. Sit with the calculation nobody runs before they sign, because a car payment was never just a car payment. It is a decision about your future self. Take that average new car payment, call it around $750 a month, and do something quietly radical with it instead. Meet Broke Brian and Smart Sam. Hired the same week, same job, same starting pay. Broke Brian finances the impressive car and feels like he made it every morning in the driveway. Smart Sam keeps driving a paid-off used car and funnels that same $750 a month into a boring low-cost index fund. At a long-run average return around 7% after inflation, Sam is sitting on well over $100,000 in 10 years. Let it run 30 years, and Sam is staring at more than $900,000. So the real choice was never nice car or boring car. It was a slightly nicer car now, or nearly $1 million later. That is the second price tag, the one that never shows up on the window sticker. Every dollar locked into looking wealthy is a dollar that can never go to work becoming wealthy. And the younger you are when you see this, the more violent the gap becomes, because time does the heavy lifting. Picture Sam and Brian at 25. Brian finances the car that matches the title. Sam drives something reliable and boring and lets the payment compound until they are both in their 50s. By then, the gap is not $100,000 or even a few $100,000. It is the difference between Brian still clocking in because he has to and Sam walking away because he wants to. The luxury car did not just cost a monthly payment. It quietly bought Brian a decade of extra working years and handed the bill to a future version of himself who never got a vote. The car is only the most obvious example, because the same logic runs straight through the biggest purchase most people ever make: the house. There is a quiet trap in buying more home than you need, and it has almost nothing to do with the mortgage payment itself. Every major possession drags an entire ecosystem of expenses behind it, a lifestyle multiplier. A bigger house is not just a bigger payment. It is more property tax, more insurance, more heating and cooling, more maintenance on more square footage, and then the slow, invisible pressure to fill all those rooms with furniture you would never have bought if the rooms did not exist. Buy the big house and suddenly you need the bigger couch, the lawn equipment, the storage for the things you bought to fill the space you bought. A purchase that felt like one decision quietly becomes 20. The quietly wealthy run that full calculation before they commit, which is why so many live in homes far more modest than their net worth could justify. The bill for the image does not always wait 30 years either. Often it arrives every single month with interest bolted on. Americans are carrying roughly $1.3 trillion in credit card debt. For households that carry a balance, the average sits near $6,700. The average interest rate on cards actually charging interest has been hovering around 21%. That is not a fee. That is a subscription service to being broke, billed monthly, auto-renewing. Because when you finance a lifestyle on a card at 21%, you are not just paying for the thing. You are paying for the thing, and then paying the bank a steep premium for the privilege of pretending you could afford it. A $6,000 balance at that rate, covered only at the minimum, can take the better part of a decade to clear and stack thousands of dollars in interest on top of whatever you originally bought. Zoom all the way out, and total household debt in America has crossed $18.8 trillion. A meaningful slice of that is not survival or emergency. It is performance. It is the running cost of a costume that fools strangers and quietly robs the person wearing it. Now, before we get to what the wealthy do instead, there is one number that reframes the whole street you live on, and almost nobody sees it because it is invisible by design. Net worth. Income announces itself loudly. Net worth stays completely silent, and the gap between the two is staggering. The median household net worth, the true middle of the country, sits somewhere around $192,000. The average gets reported closer to $1 million, but that is because a small number of enormously rich households drag the average upward. The median is the honest picture, and it tells you most people own far less than the cars and houses around them suggest. It gets sharper by age. Households under 35 have a median net worth near $39,000. And here is the line researchers keep circling back to. Your savings rate predicts your future wealth better than your income does. A high earner who saves almost nothing ends up poorer in retirement than a modest earner who quietly kept and invested a fifth of everything. Income is vanity. Net worth is sanity. The faucet does not decide who is wealthy. What you do with the water does. Once that lands, you start seeing your whole neighborhood differently. The house with the boat in the driveway and 2 new trucks is no longer obviously the rich house. It might be. Or it might be the most leveraged household on the block, one bad quarter from selling everything at a loss. The neighbor in the paid-off older car, the one whose patio furniture has survived 15 summers, might be sitting on a portfolio that would quietly stun you. You cannot tell from the outside, and that is exactly the point the wealthy are counting on. If any of this is landing, this is the kind of breakdown I dig into every week. The actual mechanics of money instead of the highlight reel. And since so much of this comes down to knowing your own numbers before you make a single big decision, there is a tool linked first in the description that does that part for you. You answer a few honest questions about your situation, and it tailors the picture to your circumstances, instead of handing you generic advice built for someone else. Take the quiz if you are curious where you actually stand. Then let me pull the lens back, because looking poor on purpose is no longer just a quirk of a few frugal millionaires. In 2026, it has grown into a full cultural shift. For a long time, the loudest version of luxury sat at the very top, and everyone below strained to climb toward it. That hierarchy is quietly flipping. Among the actually wealthy, visible logos have started to read as insecurity rather than success. The new signal is the absence of a signal. A plainly cut, beautifully made coat with no branding. A watch only another collector would clock. Status now gets whispered sideways to the handful of people who already recognize it, rather than shouted downward to a crowd. And beneath the wealthy, the middle class started copying the strategy out of pure practicality. There is a movement online with the clunky name underconsumption, the whole point of which is to use what you already own until it truly wears out. Repair instead of replace. Stop performing abundance for an audience that does not care. The stigma around buying the cheaper version has mostly collapsed. People proudly hunt for the option that delivers most of the experience at a fraction of the price, then route the difference somewhere that actually grows. As one person online put it, "I am not broke, I am just pre-rich." The look went out of style at the exact moment people realized the look was making them poor. This brings us to the single most important distinction in personal finance. And it sounds almost too simple right up until it rearranges how you see everyone around you. Income is not wealth. Income is the water coming through the faucet. Wealth is the water you actually keep in the tank. A person can have an enormous faucet, a huge salary, and a tank with a crack in the bottom, spending every dollar as fast as it pours in. They look rich and own almost nothing. Another person can have a modest faucet but a sealed tank, keeping and investing a real slice of everything, and quietly become the wealthier of the two. The luxury SUV signals a big faucet. It tells you nothing about the tank. And the louder the signal, the more often it is covering for a tank that is nearly dry. The truly wealthy figured this out long ago. They stopped competing on the size of the faucet, which everyone can see, and started competing on the size of the tank, which almost no one can. Looking poor is simply what a full tank looks like from the outside. So if that is what looking rich costs, what do the truly wealthy actually do? And this is where the story turns, because the answer is almost boring. That, it turns out, is exactly why it works. Go back to the stoplight, to the dented Honda. The data was pointing at that car the whole time. Researchers at Experian found that most households earning more than $250,000 a year do not drive luxury brands at all. They drive Hondas, Toyotas, and Fords, the same cars sitting in your neighbor's driveway. They could clearly afford the badge. They simply choose not to. The personal finance world has been documenting this for decades, ever since a landmark study of American millionaires found that most car buyers tie up close to a third of their net worth in vehicles, while actual millionaires spend around 1%. They buy used, buy quality, drive it into the ground, and rarely finance it. The richest people in that research were the least interested in looking the part. The numbers behind who actually becomes wealthy are even more revealing. Around 8 out of 10 millionaires are first-generation rich, meaning they built it themselves rather than inheriting it. A large share never averaged 6 figures in household income in a single year, and roughly a third never had a 6-figure household income across their entire careers. So the picture that forms is not a story of giant salaries and glittering lives. It is a story of ordinary incomes meeting unusual discipline, which means the whole thing comes down to a handful of moves. And I want to hand them to you plainly, because none of them are complicated. The first move is to unhook your income from your identity. Lifestyle inflation is dangerous because we treat a raise as permission to upgrade who we are. A bigger paycheck lands and suddenly the old car feels embarrassing and the apartment feels small. The quietly wealthy interrupt that reflex. When income rises, their lifestyle mostly holds steady, and the difference flows straight into investments. A raise is a chance to widen the gap between what you earn and what you live on, because that gap, not the salary, is what eventually becomes freedom. The second move is to make spending hard and saving automatic. Willpower is a terrible long-term plan because it runs out at the wrong moments, when you are tired or stressed or scrolling at midnight. So instead of trusting discipline, the wealthy design their environment. They automate the transfer into investments the day they get paid, before the money ever feels spendable. Pay yourself first, the oldest rule there is. Broke Brian earns, spends on everything that comes up, and tries to save whatever survives to the end of the month, which is almost always nothing, because life expands to swallow whatever is left. Smart Sam flips the order. The investment comes out first, automatically, the instant the paycheck lands, and he builds his life around what remains. Same income, completely different outcome, purely because of sequence. And because it is automatic, Sam keeps investing through the scary months as well as the good ones, which is exactly when it matters most. The third move is to drive it until it dies, and extend that same patience to almost everything you own. The fastest way to bleed money is to replace things that still work, either because a newer version exists or because boredom crept in. A phone that makes calls and runs your apps does not need replacing because a slightly better camera launched. There is a simple calculation for this. Before any purchase, estimate how many times you will realistically use the thing, then divide the price by that number. A $200 jacket worn twice costs $100 every time you put it on. A solid jacket worn 200 times costs pennies per wear. Run that math for real, and most impulse buys collapse on the spot, while the truly worthwhile ones reveal themselves clearly. The fourth move is to decide what enough looks like before the money arrives, not after. High earners get trapped because they never set a finish line, so every bump in income just shoves the target further out. They earn more, expect more, and feel exactly as stretched at 300,000 as they did at 80. The wealthy decide in advance what a sufficient home, a sufficient car, and a sufficient life actually are. Then let every dollar past that point flow into building the tank. The secret is not that they earn dramatically more. It is that they stopped moving the goalpost every time they got close to it. And the fifth move might be the hardest. Mute the comparison feed. A huge share of the pressure to look rich does not come from your real life at all. It pours out of a glowing rectangle showing you a curated highlight reel of people you will never meet, most of whom are performing a prosperity they cannot afford. You are not keeping up with the wealthy. You are keeping up with other stretched people who happen to be very good at lighting. Your investment strategy should not be vibes and hoping the feed was right. Curate what you let in. Follow fewer accounts built to sell you a lifestyle, and the urge to buy your way into belonging quiets down almost on its own. Let me make all of it concrete with the one test that settles the whole argument. Take Smart Sam and Broke Brian, hired the same week, same role, same starting salary, both sharp, both well-liked. Brian celebrates the new job by leasing the car that matches the title, signs for an apartment that stretches the budget to its edge, and over the years upgrades the phone on schedule and the lifestyle a half step ahead of every raise. From the outside, Brian looks like the one winning. Sam keeps driving the car he already owned, splits a modest place, and quietly routes a fifth of every paycheck into investments before the money ever touches his checking account. Then life does what life does. A recession hits and the company announces layoffs. Both get the same envelope on the same morning. Brian, the one who looked successful, has almost nothing saved and a stack of payments that do not pause just because the income did. Within weeks, he is taking the first job that calls, on whatever terms it offers, because the obligations never stopped. Sam, the one who looked plain, has a cushion deep enough to breathe. He takes a few months. He turns down 2 offers that were wrong and accepts the one that was right, on his own timeline. Same salary the whole way through, same town, same starting point. The only difference is that one spent a decade buying the appearance of wealth and the other spent that decade quietly buying the real thing. That gap, invisible for years, becomes the entire story the moment the ground shifts. And that is what the tank really buys. Optionality. The power to walk away from a job that is grinding you down. To take 6 months when a family emergency hits. To move cities for someone you love. To say no to money that would cost you something you believe in. Those choices are what real wealth actually buys. And they only exist for people who built a wide gap between what they earn and what they spend. So the next time you feel that pull to spend money proving something to people who are not even watching, go back one last time to the stoplight. The luxury SUV and the dented Honda, side by side, telling 2 completely different stories about success. You see them differently now. You know which driver is more likely trapped, and which is more likely free, and you know the gap between them was never really about income. The dented Honda is not a symbol of struggle. To the people who understand the game, it is the calling card of someone who already won, and simply decided not to announce it. The richest move you can make is very often the one nobody can see.